Hello and welcome to the first official History Buffs podcast. I'm going to talk a little bit today about something that really bothers me when it comes to historical movies. But before then, I just want to say thank you all for the wonderful support you have given me this past month. And the feedback you have given me has really helped in me trying to make this channel the best I possibly can. Recently, I uploaded an unofficial podcast asking you guys what kind of podcast you wanted to hear. And most of you have asked for the same thing, which is that you would like it if I can go into further detail on some reviews that I have done or am about to do, which actually makes perfect sense because due to time constraints, I can't go into detail about every single thing that is wrong with the movies that I'm reviewing, because otherwise you could just go on for hours. So some of you have also asked if I could do an email segment, which is, of course, I'm happy to do. So if you message me through the History Buffs YouTube channel, I will answer that question in the next podcast. Now, it doesn't have to be history related, though. You can ask me anything you want, whether it be about movies, games, or about my private life if you want, although I'm sure that there'll be nothing more boring for me to talk about. But generally, there are no restrictions. I'm still trying to figure out what kind of show to do. But in any case, I am just blown away with how quickly you guys have come aboard for my channel. I'm looking at the view count for Zulu right now, and it's about 1,161 views for a video I uploaded just 3 weeks ago. And Gladiator, which I uploaded just a week ago, has nearly 1,000 views already, which is just incredible for a small channel starting out. So I thank you for that, and if you can think of anyone else who might be interested in this show, please share it out. Whether it be anyone you know from the oldspill.com website or any of your mates, it would mean the absolute world to me. So back on point, I wanted to talk about something that I've noticed a lot recently in historical movies. It seems to me that more often than not, we are getting movies where the protagonist seems to be a man out of his time, sharing moral views that seem closer to what we currently believe in the 21st century rather than what everyone else in that protagonist's time period. Now, the justification behind this is that filmmakers will argue that they have to make the hero relatable to the audience. Otherwise, we won't like him or sympathize with him, which is just fucking ridiculous if you ask me. I mean, I can name dozens of movies off the top of my head which counters this argument. Like one example would be Tony Montana in Scarface. How on earth does a psychopathic criminal relate to us? What, because he has like a moral code of not killing women and children? Oh, okay. But killing anyone else is absolutely fine. Alright, okay. So, why is this concept so constant with historical movies if it's ridiculous? I mean, this is something I've noticed when I was doing my research for Kingdom of Heaven. There's one scene that just infuriates me the more I think about it. Okay, well, this is one of the many scenes that actually infuriate me. But of course, due to time constraints, I won't be talking about this specific one when I finally review the movie. So I actually thought it'd be a good idea to do it here instead. So anyway, it's that bit towards the end of the movie when Saladin's army is just about to besiege Jerusalem. And Orlando Bloom gives one of those really weak speeches where in this instance he's talking about which religion has the right to be the dominant one in Jerusalem. So he says, which is more holy, the wall, the mosque, the sepulchre? Who has claim? No one has claim. All have claim. What a bunch of tofu farting, tree hugging hippie bollocks. I mean, I don't think the filmmakers are aware of how outrageous his statement is to the medieval mindset. It's not only controversial then, but it's controversial now. This doesn't sound like something a medieval knight would say, but it sounds like something a stoned liberal protester would say when being interviewed by a journalist. I mean, he would probably say something like, the thing is, those Israelis should just totally chill out, and those Palestinians should also chill out. I mean, who has claim? All have claim. Oh, really? And how should they go about it? I don't know, man. I'm just a sophomore. See how retarded this sounds? So why on earth is Orlando Bloom spouting this rubbish? I mean, I can guarantee you that no man in the medieval age was ever thinking this way. This idea of tolerance is really only a modern invention, one that we still have yet to perfect. This has been part of the human condition for thousands of years. Not even in the Islamic world during the Middle Ages where there was much tolerance. Like, I'm of course referring to the general misconception that where Christians and Jews lived happily side by side with Muslims in peace. That's usually held as the gold standard of tolerance with many historians during that time period. And yet, they were just barely tolerated. I mean, anyone who was a non Muslim were low class citizens with very little rights and had to pay a heavy tax called the jizya at a humiliating public ceremony where they would be like struck on the head or the nape of the neck. This was to symbolize their humiliation and to assert Muslim dominance. And this actually carried on until the 20th century. So, yeah, if you consider not having your head cut off as tolerant, then I guess, yeah, they're pretty cool. Another example I could think of is in that scene, The Patriot, where the British bad guy goes to Mel Gibson's slaves and says, anyone who fights for the crown will earn their freedom. And then they say, sir, we're not slaves, we work this land as freed men. So basically, they want to make Mel Gibson's character likable, but also own a plantation. Well, we all know that anyone who owned a plantation in 18th century America had slaves working it. So rather than just being faithful to history, they have Mel Gibson free his slaves and hire them back to work his land. Okay, now I'm sure there were like a couple of people here and there that probably did do this, but that was obviously not considered the norm back then. So these movies are supposed to recreate our history, but this one wants to take out all the nasty bits, which quite frankly reeks of desperation. Oh no, you can't have the main character be a slave owner because owning slaves is wrong, and audiences don't like slavery. It's like, okay, you know what? While you're at it, if he's so ahead of his time, why doesn't he put in motion the idea to abolish slavery altogether? In fact, he could also put forward the idea of women's right to vote and to legalize gay marriage. I mean, after all, why not? Oh yeah, that's right, because that shit hasn't happened yet. I'm still watching a history movie, right? We haven't moved on to fantasy epics all of a sudden. I believe these kinds of movies really do insult our intelligence. I mean, I think that us liking a character has nothing to do with us finding common ground with their moral code. If you want a perfect example of that, I would really recommend you guys to watch the TV show Vikings. There's this scene in season 1 where the Vikings raid Lindisfarne, which was an island monastery in northern England. So our heroes, our protagonists, come into this monastery and they slaughter all of these unarmed priests, which is exactly what happens in real life. Did anyone stop watching the show when that happened? No, they accepted it because they understood that that's what Vikings were like. If the writers from Kingdom of Heaven or The Patriot were to do that scene, then they would have a bit where the protagonist probably says, no, we shouldn't do this. Killing priests is wrong. Which would be outrageous. But ask yourself, is it any less outrageous than pussing out of the idea of having black people working a plantation as slaves? Or having a medieval knight challenge the idea of the Crusades in the first place? I don't think that modern audiences should be pampered like little children whenever something scary pops up on the screen. These movies should be able to remind us of how far we have come in improving our civilization. If you take out the bits we are ashamed of, then you undermine your own credibility in calling yourself a historical movie. I mean, like, why is it that I find more realism in Game of Thrones, a story that takes place in a fantastical setting with dragons, than in Kingdom of Heaven or The Patriot? Probably because it's unapologetic and gives you an idea of how brutal medieval society can be. This includes intolerance and backward thinking. Understanding the roots of such problems today is the first step towards fixing it, so I implore you guys, whenever you watch a historical movie, don't settle for one that feels like it has to hold your hand. If it sounds like bullshit and smells like bullshit, then it's probably bullshit. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. As you can see, this is still a work in progress, of course, but hopefully I could start doing more podcasts in the future, and I'm going to see about getting myself a co-host as well. I think next show might be a little bit longer if I had some emails to answer as well. I mean, I also can't very well do a news update like Jeff does in Rage Select, since this is a show all about history. But in any case, I am Nick Hodges, and thank you very much for listening.